type of games, biggest games of the week. Let's go Kansas City Chiefs at the Jacksonville Jaguars. It's a playoff rematch from last year. Chiefs on the road, favored by 3 against the Jags. Jags are 1-0 here. Chiefs coming off that disappointing loss to the Lions. Chris Jones is back. Is he going to play? Is he in game shape? I mean, Chris Jones has been re-signed. Won't get into a lot of the details other than anybody with any sense of contracts and whatever, from Brad Spielberger to everyone else you might read, say it's just a wasted holdout.
Yeah.
Because they just tacked on some incentives to his contract this year. They can still franchise tag him at the end of the year.
That's the brutal thing.
Not a great
We'll talk to Brad about this more in one of the next 2 days. But yeah, that doesn't feel like a great win for Chris Jones. On the other hand, for the Chiefs, it's a win because not only do they not have to pay him a ton more, but they get him back now, which is important. I feel like Kansas City is a classic, overreaction possibility out of week 1. The two of their best 3 players should be back on the field for this game. That's a pretty important milestone. Also,
we'll still see on Kelsey.
I think he'll be back.
A lot of other people said it's really a multi-week injury, and even though they thought, we'll test it out and we'll see if he plays last week, he wasn't close. It wasn't like he was kind of close, and he wasn't close. So we don't know that Kelsey's back yet.
No, but the other element is, that was one of the worst wide receiver performances collectively you're ever going to see in an NFL game last week. That's not going to happen twice in a row. Kadarius Toney is not going to have the worst game an NFL player has had since 2018 by our grades twice consecutively. Sky Moore is unlikely to run 30 routes and just barely see the ball twice in a row. Something is going to give there. Mahomes was able to put the ball in his receiver's hands multiple times in that game for plays that could have extended the drive, and they conspired not to let that happen. So I feel like the baseline for that offense, even Kelsey-less, is better than a week ago, and now Chris Jones is being added back to the defense.
We got one quick update here. Nick Sirianni is saying that James Bradberry, for the Eagles, James Bradberry and Kenneth Gainwell trending toward not playing on Thursday night. So if we could just cut that and just drop it into the Eagles-Vikings analysis.
Well, we talked about questionable with the concussion.
So I'll give you updates. I'll give you updates as we go here live on a Wednesday morning. Appreciate everybody. Lively chat here as always on YouTube. But this is a great matchup, right? A lot of people love the Jags, and to me, this is another one of those Trevor Lawrence statement type of games. I thought he played pretty well in the playoff game against Kansas City, but I think to beat the Chiefs, even the Chiefs that just lost, to beat the Chiefs, you got to play at an elite level. And Lawrence he's got to have those special plays. He had a bunch of them last week against Indianapolis. Loved his game. Loved watching Calvin Ridley and their connection right away. The Jags, I think, have the horses to put up points and compete with Kansas City's offense. But I'm curious to know how good Chris Jones is in his return, because the Jags' interior offensive line, it didn't look good on paper coming into the season. Brandon Scherf got banged up during the game. They didn't look great against the Colts. That led to DeForest Buckner had his way with them, and he had the strip sack that ended up being a touchdown. Chris Jones, if he's in game shape, can wreak havoc up front. Mm-hmm. And then again, the trickle down to the other Kansas City defensive linemen. They still only gave up 14 points against the Lions the other night. So I think it's going to be a good matchup on that side of the ball.
Do you think there's a decent amount of pressure on Kansas City after dropping that game? Because we're in this world now. This is, week 1 is overreaction. An 0-2 hole is significant for any team. Obviously Cincinnati showed last year you can dig out of it. It's not the worst thing in the world. But it's a lot of pressure if you're 0-2.
I might make this comparison a million times over the next 10 years. But the only comparison, we consider the Chiefs, they're the closest thing to a dynasty, right, in the current NFL. The last dynasty was the Patriots. It lasted 20 years, but they had their ups and downs, right? And there was plenty of times in New England where people declared them dead. I don't think they ever started 0-2, but they'd start 1-2, or they get waxed by Kansas City on Monday Night Football and they were declared dead. That stuff happens. So they're still the Chiefs, right? They still show up to practice this week, and they're still really, really good. They still have Patrick Mahomes. Mahomes will look good in that game despite poor second half stats and all the drops. So, yeah, I think there's pressure, But even if they did fall all 0-2, I'm not ready to write them off. But I think they're going to right the ship this week. So I'm leaning towards Kansas City in this one. But I love the matchup. It's a huge game for the Jags to say we're not just the best team in the AFC South. We're up there. We're with Kansas City and those other teams that were supposed to be good, the Bills and the Bengals, all of which are 0-1 right now, by the way.
Yeah, I mean, it's a big opportunity, I think, for Jacksonville. Like last week with Detroit felt a little bit like you kind of need to win this game because Kansas City is so depleted in terms of their best players. If you can't beat them now under these circumstances, like when are you going to be able to do it? For Jacksonville, though, I think, Kansas City is getting some of those players back. And now it's almost they're in it. They got a win. Kansas City didn't. Like, it's a big opportunity for them, I think, to sort of put a statement out there that, yeah, we are a for real team at this kind of level, and let's see what happens. And if it doesn't work out, well, it's still the Chiefs.
Yeah, so the guy that I like to watch every single week too, Trayvon Walker for the Jags. We did have a question in the chat about him. A solid game as a pass rusher the other day, not terrible. Actually struggled from a run defense standpoint. Got lost contain at least once. I mean, that's more of a mental error than anything. Out of position a couple times, so didn't end up with the best grade. But Trayvon Walker showing some flashes as a rusher, did have a sack. I mean, that's what the Jags need. If we remember the divisional playoff game last year, the one thing that stood out to me a ton, this was the game where Mahomes hurt his ankle, and he could not move. They had to take him out, right? Chad Henne comes in, goes 99-yard touchdown drive. Mahomes could not move. And it was like the Chiefs' offensive line put the clamps down in the second half, and they said, not only are we not going to allow pressure, you're not going to get anywhere close to Mahomes, right? So the Jags need to get some kind of pressure. Josh Allen on the other side had a really good game. They moved Trayvon Walker and Josh Allen around a lot. Last week, Donovan Smith had some issues at left tackle for the Chiefs. I want to see that Donovan Smith matchup. If Josh Allen's on that side, when Trayvon Walker's on that side, see if they can get some pressure. And even the pressure that the Lions got against the Chiefs, no sacks of Mahomes because he's just an absolute magician, feels the pressure, knows where to go, gets rid of the ball. I think the Jags need to take him down a couple times. They need to create some negative plays because I'm with you. I don't expect the Chiefs to be that bad at receiver, at pass catcher this week.
I think one thing from week one, though, that could be interesting is, like, there was a lot of talk, obviously, on Jawan Taylor and his stance and his potential jumping offside, or not jumping, false starting. But that offensive line generally had its hands full with the Detroit pass rush. I mean, Donovan Smith at left tackle had problems, and he's declined in the past already. We sort of assumed it would be a bit of a bounce back. Trey Smith, like the guards, had problems as well. And then Jawan Taylor had his stuff, which is, I think, generally not a huge problem, but like that would give you signs of life as opposition of, hey, maybe that tackle change that they went through is actually not, an upgrade, and that's an area we can attack again.
You okay over there?
No.
What's wrong?
It's something that can't get it out of my throat.
I'll give you one more matchup to watch. Again, I don't know what Chris Jones is going to be like, but remember there are times when they line him up on the edge. Mm-hmm. Not a couple years ago, but they picked their spots. And at right tackles, rookie Anton Harrison, he's a rookie. He's okay. He's got work to do. If the Chiefs pick their spots, hey, we're going to put Chris Jones on Anton Harrison for 3 or 4 key rushes. Just keep an eye on that. That's exactly what Chris Jones did in the AFC Championship. Had the sack that allowed for the game-winning drive for the Chiefs. So I think Kansas City bounces back here, not just because of Chris Jones or Kelsey, but because they're still the Chiefs, and I'm going to believe in them until they give me a lot more evidence that I shouldn't.
Yeah. I mean, I think they were very, very bad last week and missing key players, and they still almost won. This week, I think both of those things should be better, which probably means they'll win.